Brock Purdy throws 3 picks, loses to the Chiefs. Niner fans are upset. They were really hoping to break through against the Chiefs, and now it looks like they might never. They might never. And Brock was the one who turned the ball over the most, and people have really been getting their takes off. People like me have been getting takes off about Brock Purdy this week. Are people just piling on for the sake of it?
Yeah, I think that the perception is he just had one bad game, guys. He just had one bad game. I think the people that are really protective of him, that's what they're standing on. It's just one bad game. He's had a great season. It's a bad game. He's had a great career. Like, it's easy to pile on after a bad one. But the reality of the situation is this is not a bad game. This is a pretty big trend. And it doesn't matter how you look at it. You could look at it. Let's take the season as a whole right now. We're 7 games in. This is a 7-game sample size. He has 33 starts in his career. This is about 20% of his career starts that we're talking about here. Okay. So in that time span, he has 11 touchdowns and 9 turnovers in 7 games. Well, that's not good. And that's, a 7-game sample size. We can do well, listen, last week was a bad game. Let's remove that game. We can remove that game. But if we're going to do that, to be fair, and a lot of people that take data will do this. They'll remove your best and remove your worst and then give you an average. So let's remove his best and his worst game and see what the other 5 bear out. Well, his best game was against Seattle 2 weeks ago. His worst game was against Kansas City. So we've got a 5-game sample size. What does that tell us? 6 touchdowns, 6 turnovers in 5 games. That's not very good. All right, well, let's go to the last 12 games. That was the stat that came out the other day. Last 12 games, he has 12 interceptions. That's just interceptions. We're not even including fumbles. If we go turnovers, we're talking about minimum 15 because we know that he has 3 this year. So minimum 15 turnovers, maybe more in the last 12 games. Okay. Well, let's take it a step further. And again, 12 games is not a small sample size for somebody who's only played, 30-something games in their career. And Brock Purdy, that's a third of their games. But Brock Purdy, outside of his rookie year, has played 26 games and has 23 turnovers. A lot of people, especially Brock supporters, because it happens all the time in my channel, being a Josh Allen supporter, I know, will say things like, Brock just had himself a Josh Allen kind of day. Well, in those same 26 games, Josh Allen had 24 turnovers and Brock has 23. So if Josh Allen is turnover prone with his 24, wouldn't that make Brock Purdy turnover prone with his 23?
The difference is that Josh Allen is scoring more touchdowns than anyone else in the league.
16 more touchdowns over that span than Brock Purdy had. So Brock Purdy has 48 touchdowns to 23 turnovers. Josh Allen has 64 touchdowns to 24 turnovers. So, and then you can take it a step further. What was Brock Purdy in college? He turned the ball over a lot.
Yeah.
People got mad at you in practice. Oh, it's just training camp. So he was that in college. He was that in training camp. He's been that really since his rookie year. It doesn't matter how you slice it. He turns the ball over too much. This is not people piling on after a bad game. What this really is people saw this bad game and they said, hold on a second. Let's start really looking into things here. It's like all of a sudden you get audited by the IRS for your taxes. And it's like, well, it's just one bad year where I didn't turn in my taxes. They're like, well, yeah, but now that we started looking at things, it's like, you haven't been turning things in or doing stuff right for the last 10 years. Like, that's what's happened here is people are just like, has he really been good? Has he been bad? What's the sample size? And it's been all over his film this year. This is who he is right now. He's got to turn it around, but this is not one bad game, Grant. This is who he's trending to be.
And you look at his numbers this year, his quarterback rating is 91. Well, that's not good. And then you okay, well, what if you extend it back to last season, through the playoffs, back to the Ravens game? You go back to Christmas, his quarterback rating is 87. So this is a trend that's been happening since Santa Claus was gracing everyone's house except for the young Jewish men and kids. Everyone besides Kyle from South Park that's when things went bad for the 49ers and for Brock Purdy. So something's been going on with him for a while. And I feel like I think the same thing happened to Jimmy. So that's why I keep coming back to Kyle. I feel like we saw this happen to one of his quarterbacks before. Hot start, a lot of wins, great numbers, go to the Super Bowl, kind of limp into the Super Bowl, at least from the quarterback perspective, lose, and then a steady decline. And it'd be interesting to sort of compare Jimmy's career trajectory to Brock's. Clearly, Brock is a harder working, better athlete, but will he be ultimately a more successful quarterback than Jimmy was under Kyle Shanahan? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to the
You know what I'm
question.
saying?
I just think, yeah. I mean, 49ers are at such a crossroads right now. If this season goes south, it really, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered with the
I got
coach,
another
the
question for you.
quarterback, everything. Yeah.
Let's say they decide that Brock Purdy's not their franchise quarterback and
Okay.
they want to trade him. They do what,
Okay.
maybe the Dolphins should have done with Tua, whatever. They decide, no, we're going to trade. I guess what Washington ultimately decided with Kirk Cousins.
Okay.
What's he worth? And which teams would absolutely abandon whatever they're doing at quarterback to trade for Brock and pay him?
I think this is what's tough is that usually quarterback needy teams are going to be near the top of the draft, and teams are more excited to draft the unknown rookie than a guy who's been in the league and producing under Kyle Shanahan. Like, regardless of what our thoughts are of Kyle or your thoughts are of Kyle, the league does revere him as a good play caller and an offensive guy. And so when a quarterback plays well under him, I think that they give that quarterback like the Kyle Shanahan boost. What would he be though here? And
Yeah, the Raiders
I
learned that
don't,
one the hard way with Jimmy.
right, exactly. And so I don't know, man. I don't know that he has great value across the league. Maybe somebody would give up a couple seconds for him. Maybe.
I mean, the Panthers need a quarterback, but is Brock Purdy going to turn them around? The Raiders
They
need a
need a lot more
quarterback,
than
but
a
they already
quarterback.
tried with Jimmy Garoppolo, and now Tom Brady's their owner, and he couldn't use the word average enough when he was talking about Brock Purdy the other day. I don't think they would go for him. I mean, I don't think the Cardinals would move off of their guy. I mean, maybe the Rams would like Brock Purdy after Stafford retires. I don't think there's that many teams that are looking at Brock Purdy as a franchise savior, including the Niners.
Well, the argument that I've been making is that make him play out his rookie year. And I did a NFC West roundtable yesterday, and the Seahawks guy asked me a really good question. He says, "Well, do you think Brock would go for that?" And I said, "What choice does Brock have? If they put him on the open market, do you think any other team across the league is genuinely going to offer him $50+ million? My guess is absolutely not. So what are you going
Which
to do?
team? I'd love to know which team would do that.
No team. I don't think.
And
I
which
don't
team would
think
trade
any
the Niners
team
a
would.
first round pick for him? I'd have to hear a team. I'm looking at the chat. Does anyone in the chat have a suggestion? The Rams? I don't think the Rams want him. I don't think the Seahawks want him. Again, like you said, if the Niners give up on a quarterback and decide he's not worth it, we want to trade him. I think a lot of teams like, well, if Kyle's
Yeah.
giving up on him, we're not going to do better with him than Kyle did. I mean, look at these numbers that he produced with Kyle. He's not going to produce numbers like that with me.
Yeah, I don't. It's funny because going into this year, I made a comment about JJ McCarthy that a lot of people disagreed with, and I said I would guarantee you that if you give any team in the league that is quarterback needed the option to spend their first round pick on Brock Purdy or JJ McCarthy, they'll take JJ McCarthy.
I feel it. I'm getting some suggestions from the chat. They're saying Jets, Dolphins, Titans. Jets, Dolphins, Titans, getting a lot of those. Cleveland, Saints.
Maybe the Titans. The Titans I could see because but it's what does Carthon think of him? What does he actually think of him? That's what it comes down to. If he liked him, I actually could see the Titans possibly doing that. I don't think the Jets would. Absolutely not. And the Dolphins have Tua. No, so no, I don't think either of those teams would.
Yeah. And it'd be interesting to see if Kyle Shanahan could pivot to Jed and John York and say, look, this quarterback that you thought you were going to be making the highest paid player in franchise history, let's trade him.
Mike wasn't here when Purdy was here. That's the other thing for the Dolphins, right? Like McDaniel wasn't here when Purdy was here, right? They didn't cross paths. So he doesn't know Purdy. So there's no reason for him to be like, yeah, give me that guy.
Part of me does feel though that like Brock is a victim of Kyle to a degree. I know it seems weird because Kyle pumps these guys up and builds them up, but I feel like he builds them up to knock them down. He has you believing you're the best quarterback in the league, and then by the end of your tenure with him, you're like in therapy. You've lost all confidence. Like Jimmy Garoppolo went from being the most confident quarterback irrationally in the league to being one of the least confident, and it happened in about 3 years. And I just feel like maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like Brock was more confident in the past than he is now. He's running around. I don't think he knows what he wants to do.
Will you do me a favor, because you have a much bigger following than me, and I want the biggest sample size possible? Will you post a poll on Twitter that says one of them has to go at the end of this year, Brock or Kyle? Who are you choosing to leave or stay? However you want to word it. I'm curious.
If one of them has to go after this season, who should it be?
Kyle or Brock?
Kyle Shanahan, Brock Purdy. If one of them, how about if one has to go after this season, who should it be? Kyle Shanahan, Brock Purdy. Boom.
And retweet it's a poll, right? You made it a poll?
Right. I guarantee you it's going to be like 75% to 85% Kyle.
Kyle, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Niner fans like Brock, and Niner fans are getting annoyed with Kyle. There is a vocal minority of Kyle defenders that are loud and persistent on social media, but I think most Niner fans are starting to side-eye this guy. Jesse's in the process of retweeting. I can see it in his face.
Yes, I am retweeting. I'm finding and retweeting. There we go. And voting.
The thing about Brock is like why this turnover issue is a problem is because like people say like, well, Brett Favre threw a lot of picks or Josh Allen turns the ball over. Like those are some of the most prolific players in terms of scoring. Like they they're good would outweigh their bad most of the time. Brock's not that kind of guy at all. He needs to be efficient.
Jordan Love's low key turning into those guys where it's like he's turning the ball over twice a game, but he's also getting like he has in 2 less games like 5 or 6 more touchdowns already than Brock, but he has a lot of turnovers too.
Stafford was that way when he won the Super Bowl. Like he led the league in interceptions when he won the Super Bowl. Like it's okay for certain guys, but not for Brock. He's 0-5 in games where he throws 2 picks. So you for sure can't throw 3. You need to be. I know everyone's like he's not a game manager. He's a gunslinger. No. You manage the game.
Yeah,
manage the game. That's your job. Don't lose it. Stop losing the game. Nick Wright had this stat, and I don't have it perfectly, but he basically went and tallied up like when Brock has all of the Avengers, meaning McCaffrey, Ayuk, Debo, Kittle, Juszczyk and Trent Williams. I don't think Juszczyk counts as an Avenger, but when all those guys are healthy, he's like 13-1 with a quarterback rating like 130, something like that. And then when one of those guys is out, he's got a record below 500 with a quarterback rating way low. So that's not good. It's not good.
Yeah. I mean, and I get it. Like in a lot of those games, more than one of those guys would have been out. So like when you're looking at this year, but we saw a small sample size last year. And even I was like, hey, listen, you can't look at that 3-game stretch that he had last year without Debo and Trent and be like, oh, this is who he is. It's too small of a sample size. But now you're getting a bigger sample size. And again, we're trying to gather data. The ultimate point is Brock Purdy worth paying? Like that's the storyline or season within the season. Like we're trying to win a Super Bowl. We're hoping the 49ers win a Super Bowl, but the other part of the season is Brock Purdy worth paying and making that decision at the end of the year? Like both of those things are just as important. Maybe actually paying Brock Purdy or not paying him is more important because you're talking about mortgaging your future potentially if this isn't the right guy. So that's something that has to be discussed on a regular basis. And so every game is a data point that goes towards this.
I got a comparison for me. Like we're looking at Brock, like, is he worth it? And it's contingent on, does he win the Super Bowl and stuff? To me, he's so much like Russell Wilson. And Russell Wilson, I thought, was a great quarterback. Even though he's not going to be in the Hall of Fame, man, he was so good. And he was such a big reason why they won a Super Bowl and why they went back to the next one, even though he ultimately lost it with that throw at the goal line. They had 3 years sample size. He went to back-to-back Super Bowls. He checked all the boxes. They gave him the contract. It was one of the biggest mistakes they made in franchise history because he wasn't worth it. And they had to gut their team for it. And they had this slow slide into mediocrity. And it took them years to understand that they needed to give up and move on from it. And they're still kind of stuck in mediocrity. So that's what I feel like. Brock's really good, but is he that much better than young Russell Wilson? I don't know. And if you give him that kind of money and say, you're the best player in the team, carry it, can he do it? I don't know. So that's where I'm at with Brock. Like, he kind of feels like Russell Wilson 2.0. And I love Russell Wilson to this day, but not at that price. To this day.
I think there is a lot of similarities. In fact, after we beat the Seahawks, I had talked to my Seahawks buddy. I'm like, how does it feel to be on the other side? Like, we have our version of Russell Wilson right now, which is back-breaking runs every time you feel like you got a chance and you just can't beat him. And that's how we felt for years. So welcome to it. He's the Seahawk killer for sure. And there is a lot of similarities there. A lot of similarities actually in stature.
Now Russell had a
short area, quick,
bigger arm,
way better arm, way better arm. Yes.
Of course.
But as far as like short area quickness and size and all, there's a lot of similarities there. There really is.
And again, Russell won the Super Bowl. That was a mistake, that contract.